brothers, God bless you. Today I feel the need to open my heart and share something I've never experienced in my walk with Christ. I speak to you from the depths of my being. With trembling hands and tears still blurring my eyes, I just got up half an hour ago. And I still feel like I have no strength left. My body is heavy, my soul is burning. And my mind struggles to understand what my eyes saw. It wasn't a dream, I repeat. It wasn't a dream because dreams vanish when you open your eyes. But what I experienced remains as real as this chair I'm sitting in. I was awake, lying in my bed, when suddenly, a jolt in my spirit made me open my eyes and see what I never thought I'd witness in my Christian life. The atmosphere in my room changed. It was as if an invisible shadow had entered, and suddenly, the peace left my chest. My lips were trembling, and my first reaction was to call Franklin. Because I needed to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. Franklin, something's happening, I said to him in a broken voice. He, half asleep, turned round toward me with a confused expression, but I couldn't imagine what I was seeing with my own eyes. Suddenly, I found myself transported to a place that wasn't my room. I was inside a church, but not physically, it was my spirit that was observing. The temple was full of people, familiar and unfamiliar faces mingled together, all in the same state of despair. I saw women crying out to heaven with their hands, men running from one side to the other, young people crying. In the air, a confusion so great that it tore at the soul. Some shouted, "What happened? What's happening?" And a voice thundered, clear and powerful, resounding not only in the place but inside me, "Christ came." Those words penetrated like a two-edged sword. Hebrews 4:12 weren't just any echo, they were a sentence, they were true. I moved, without knowing how, from church to church. In some, I saw almost empty temples, in others, barely 2 or 3 people. In some, there were confused crowds. The most terrible thing wasn't the physical absence, but the spiritual emptiness I perceived. Those who were there seemed lost in a darkness they couldn't reach, escape. And again the voice like thunder that shakes the heavens repeated, "Christ came." My heart was beating so hard I felt like my chest would burst. My skin prickled and the air in my lungs became scarce. It wasn't human fear, it was a reverent fear, like when the presence of God descends on a place and fills everything. Then I understood I wasn't dreaming. This was real, too real. Trembling, I touched Franklin and shook him with desperation. "Christ came, Franklin. Christ came." He, confused, said to me in a serene, calm voice, a calm woman. But how could I calm down if I was seeing what I never thought I would witness? It was as if the veil had been torn and my eyes were beholding what so many preachers announced from the altars, the coming of the Lord, the rapture of his church. At that moment, I remembered Jesus' words in Matthew 12:42, "Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming." And I shuddered because I understood that those words were not theory. They were life, they were warnings, brothers. Believe me, I'm not one to record videos or publish my experiences. I consider myself small before God, just another servant, but what I experienced has left its mark on me, and if I keep quiet, it would be like turning off a lit lamp in the middle of the darkness. This message is not for entertainment, but to awaken me. Because while I watched those scenes, I wondered how many of those who serve in churches today, preaching, singing, and praying, are truly prepared, and how many, unfortunately, will remain on earth when Christ comes for his people. In one of those visions inside the church, I felt my spirit tremble as I saw disfigured faces, people screaming in desperation, and everyone repeating the same thing. Christ came, brothers. I can't describe in words the anguish I felt. It was a deep lament, an indescribable pain, as if my very soul were being torn apart. I hugged Franklin, seeking comfort, but nothing could calm me. Everything inside me was screaming, "Christ came. And what surprises me most, to this day, is that I was awake. These were not vague images of a dream. They were realities I could touch with the eyes of my soul. I don't want to stop here because I know that as I tell this, many of you feel the same as me. I felt a chill running through your body, a holy fear reminding us that Christ is coming soon. And I don't say it, I say it in the Word of God. 1 Thessalonians 5:2 The day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. That's why I speak to you from my heart. Don't put off until tomorrow what you must do today. If you are a Christian, stand firm in God. If you haven't yet given your life to Christ, this is the time to do it. And before continuing with what follows in this experience that transformed my life, I want to ask you something very special. Hello, if this testimony has begun to touch your heart, if you feel God is speaking to you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the Testimony 777 channel. Share this video so that others may also wake up. Leave your comment for edification and like it. I'm not doing it for numbers or fame, but because I know this message has to reach many who are still sleeping. What I saw next was even more shocking. When I closed my eyes to try to calm down, it was useless. The vision was still vivid, like a movie I couldn't stop. I was inside another church. I don't know how I got there, but my spirit understood that God was showing me what would come after the rapture. The place was packed with people, but the atmosphere wasn't one of worship, singing, or sincere prayer. It was an environment of chaos. I heard heartbreaking screams. A woman was crying, clinging to a pew, beating the floor with her hands. A man in a suit was probably a leader who was running around aimlessly, as if looking for an exit to a pain that could not be calmed. A young man cried, "Lord, forgive me, don't leave me," and again, like an echo that shattered all hope. The voice of Christ resounded. I saw desperate people raising their arms to heaven. But on their faces there was no peace, but torment. Many asked aloud what happened. What happened? Others remained silent, their gaze lost. They understood that it was too late. I watched and felt myself tearing apart inside. Because they were not strangers, they were not characters from a distant story. They were people like you and me, brothers and friends. Believers who once praised God, who once preached, who once were an example in their congregations. And yet there they were, crying, trapped in a reality they never thought they would experience. I remember that in one of those churches, my gaze fell on a young man who had been a musician. I had seen him play passionately in worship, raising his hands and crying with emotion when he felt the presence of God. But in that moment, I saw him with his face disfigured by anguish. His hands were trembling, and a crying that seemed to never end. He knelt down, stood up, and fell again, like someone who knows they've lost the greatest opportunity of their life. Another detail that impacted me was seeing people with Bibles in their hands, but the pages seemed burned. It wasn't a literal fire, but rather a spiritual sign. They had the word in their hands. They had heard the truth, but they didn't live it, and now, although they tried to take refuge in it, there was no longer any opportunity. I felt my body shaking even harder. Franklin whispered through tears, "This isn't a dream, this is real." I shook him again, as if I needed him to witness the same thing. Franklin hugged me and told me, "Don't worry, everything's okay," but I knew I wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. The vision intensified. It was as if the Spirit of God was transporting me from one temple to another, from one congregation to another. In some places, barely 2 or 3 people remained. In others, a confused crowd wondered what had happened, but in all of them, absolutely all of them, the scream resonated like a hammer hitting the heart. Christ came. I stood there watching. For a moment the face of a pastor I knew years ago. He preached with passion, but in that moment I saw him collapsed. Sitting in a corner with his hands on his head, repeating, "It can't be, it can't be." And inside me, a voice told me, "Many spoke of me with their lips, but their hearts were far from me. Matthew 15:8. The pain was unbearable, not only because I saw it, but because I felt it. I felt the desperation of those people. Their cries entered my ears as if they were my own. The echo of their voices tore at me. I can't explain how, but at the same time I watched, I heard within my spirit a firm warning: this is what will happen if you don't prepare. And I understood that this vision wasn't a simple warning for me, but for anyone who would listen. Franklin hugged me tighter, trying to calm me, but I cried even more desperately. This isn't a story, Franklin, it's not a dream. Christ came, Franklin. He tried to calm me down, but my soul knew that what I was witnessing was all too real. In the midst of that anguish, the voice of God resounded in my heart with a verse I had read so many times, but which now took on eternal weight. Because you know perfectly well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. 1 Thessalonians 5:2-3. Today I was broken like never before. Because I understood that no matter how many years one has been in the gospel, it doesn't matter if you preach, if you sing, if you serve at an altar. But what really matters is being prepared, watching with your lamp lit. And that preparation isn't achieved with appearances but with real intimacy with God, brother. As I write this, I want you to know that I'm not doing it to scare you, but to awaken your spirit. God, if you are alive today, if you can read and hear this testimony, thank God. Because you still have time to affirm yourself in Him. The rapture is not an old folk tale or an invented fable. It is a reality that will happen in the blink of an eye, as 1 Corinthians 3:52 says. And when that moment comes, there will be no time to run, or to ask for forgiveness, or to light the lamp that has already gone out. I saw it, I lived it awake, and today I share it with you so that it doesn't surprise you like a thief in the night. When I thought the vision couldn't get any more intense, I felt like I was being taken out of the temples. Suddenly, I was no longer inside a church, but in the middle of the city streets. It was as if my feet touched the pavement, but my body remained in bed. The Spirit guided me, showing me scenes that tore me apart even more. The streets were full of confusion. People were running, aimless, some barefoot, others with their clothes torn as if in their desperation they had forgotten everything. I recognized faces, brothers and sisters in the faith, preachers, leaders of prayer groups. Men and women I had seen ministering passionately at the altars, and yet they were, with their eyes wide open, tears streaming down their cheeks as if trying to reach something that was already gone forever. The most striking thing was hearing their voices. Many shouted into loudspeakers, "Christ came, Christ came," and that cry was repeated from mouth to mouth, like an echo that ran through every corner, every avenue, every corner of the city. It was a desperate cry that brought no hope but lament. There was no joy in that cry. It wasn't a hallelujah, it was a woe is me. Disguised in the words, "Christ came," I saw an older man who had been known in the community for his faith, always greeting people with a "God bless you" and reading the Bible in the squares. Now I saw him sitting on the sidewalk with a lost look, muttering to himself, "Why did I stay? Why, Lord?" I pounded the ground with my fists like someone wanting to wake up from a nightmare. But it was useless, there was no waking up, that was reality. I kept walking. Although I don't know if I was really walking or if it was just my spirit being transported, and I met a group of young people. Many of them had been worship leaders known for their passion in services. But now I saw them running aimlessly, their feet bruised by the asphalt, screaming and crying. Some hugged each other, others beat their chests, and they all repeated the same thing. Christ came. My soul trembled because I understood that gifts didn't matter. Talents didn't matter. It didn't matter if you preached or sang if your heart wasn't aligned with God. Jesus said it clearly in Matthew 7:21, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven." The echo of those words resounded in my mind. How many times have we heard Lord, Lord, on the lips of so many, and yet how many truly do the will of the Father? The vision showed me that many had lived seemingly, had let themselves be carried away by religious routine. They had neglected intimacy with God, and now in the streets, lament was their only companion. I also saw well-known preachers, men who filled temples. They had thousands of followers on social media, who were admired by multitudes, and yet they were walking barefoot, with their suits wrinkled, their voices breaking. Some repeated, "How is it possible?" I preached, I delivered, I prophesied. And immediately I remembered Jesus' words in Matthew 7:22, script 23. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, we did not prophesy in your name, and in your name we cast out demons, and in your name we performed many miracles. And then I will declare to them, I never knew you, depart from me, you workers of iniquity. That passage came to life before my eyes. It was as if every scene were an illustration of those words. Those who saw the streets were not unbelievers, they were believers who had gambled with their salvation. They had set their eyes on the things of this world, who had allowed themselves to be dragged down by vanity, pride, or hidden sin. The atmosphere was so heavy that I could barely breathe. The voices multiplied. The echo of Christ came. It resounded in every direction. I felt my chest swell. I pressed down and my tears fell. Uncontrollably, Lord, have mercy, I whispered from the depths of my soul. In the midst of that vision, I heard another voice, not from desperate men but from heaven, firm and clear. This is just a sample of what will happen, tell them to prepare today. That phrase pierced my heart. I understood that God wasn't showing me this to scare me, but to give me a mission. Warn, wake up, shake those who still spiritually sleep. I looked again at Franklin, who was still holding me in his arms in the real world. He tried to calm me, but I could barely utter words. All I kept saying was, Franklin, Christ came, Christ came. And every time I said it, I felt the truth sink deeper into my soul. Brothers, I don't know how to express in words what I saw in those streets. The pain was unbearable. The despair was indescribable, the terrifying emptiness. But what impacted me the most was that these weren't people who had never heard of Christ, but those who one day confessed him, but didn't live for him. The vision ended with an echo that seemed eternal. Christ twine. Christ came, and while those words echoed in my ears, I remembered what the scripture says in Matthew 12:44. Therefore you also must be ready, for the Son of Man will come at an hour you do not expect. When I heard that verse in my heart, I understood that this experience was not for me alone. It was an urgent call for all of us, because even though the world ignores it, even though many mock it, the day of the Lord is approaching, and only those who are prepared will ascend with it. When I thought I had seen enough pain in the churches and in the streets, the vision took an unexpected turn. Everything around me began to fade. The voices faded. The faces of despair blurred, and suddenly a shuddering silence enveloped me. It was not peace, but a heavy silence, like the calm before a storm that threatens to destroy everything. Then I saw it. A dense darkness, thicker than night, began to descend upon the earth. It was not like when the electric light goes out or when natural night falls. It was something supernatural. A black blanket that covered absolutely the entire sky closed in, and what remained of clarity suddenly disappeared. It was a darkness that not only dulled my vision but seemed to suffocate my soul. I felt the temperature drop, the air became heavy, and every breath was like inhaling fear. That darkness wasn't physical, it was only spiritual. I could sense it came from hell itself. As if the devil had cast his shadow over all of humanity, I brought my hands to my face, trying to cover my eyes, but it was no use. That darkness crept in. It tried to penetrate my heart. That's when I hugged Franklin even tighter. Shaking like a scared little girl, Franklin, I cried out in a broken voice, "Christ has come." He, not understanding what I was seeing, answered me in a calm, soft voice. "Everything is fine," but I knew nothing was fine at that moment. Franklin looked me in the eyes and said seriously, "This is the darkness that it will cover the earth." And his words hit me hard because even though he wasn't seeing what I was seeing, it seemed as if the Holy Spirit was confirming it. His lips were saying the same thing as my spirit. I understood. That darkness wasn't a simple symbol, it was a real warning of what would soon happen. I looked out over this world, and my heart beat so hard I felt it was going to burst out of my chest. That darkness advanced like a thick river that flooded everything, houses, buildings, mountains. Nothing was beyond its reach. It was as if the earth itself had been wrapped in an evil veil. What shook me the most was that within that darkness, wails could be heard. Muffled screams came from different places, but I couldn't see their faces. They were cries that chilled my blood, voices that seemed to say it was too late. I tried to move, but my legs wouldn't respond. It was like being paralyzed. Watching a scene that overwhelmed me, I could only cry out, "Lord, have mercy on your people." But the voice from heaven was clear. "This is necessary. Only those who are in me will be delivered." Today I realized something deeper. That darkness didn't just represent a physical phenomenon, but the spiritual state of the world when Christ has brought his church to humanity, a humanity without light, without hope, without guidance. I immediately remembered the words of Isaiah 60:2. "For here, darkness will cover the earth, and darkness will cover the nations. But the Lord will rise upon you, and his glory will be seen upon you." And I understood that the difference between those who will go with Christ and those who will stay will be precisely that. Some will be in the glory of his presence, and others in the despair of darkness, brothers. I cannot describe in words the weight of that darkness. It was as if every corner of the planet were covered by a shroud. The animals fell silent, the wind stopped, the waters seemed to freeze. It was total paralysis, lifeless. I cried desperately. Trembling, I said to Franklin, "Hold me, please hold me." Christ came. Franklin. Christ came. Me and he, not fully understanding, hugged me tightly, trying to calm my crying. But the truth is, there was no human consolation for what I was seeing. The vision took me to places I had never imagined. I saw entire cities, streets that once shone with lights, now plunged into the deepest darkness. There were no lamps, no moon, no stars. It was as if the entire universe had closed its eyes. The most terrifying thing was feeling that in the midst of that darkness, there was not only an absence of light, but an active presence of evil. It was as if millions of demons had been unleashed. Roaming the earth freely, I couldn't see them clearly, but I could perceive their evil whispers, mocking laughter. Chains dragging themselves in the invisible. I understood that this was the consequence of a world without the church. The spiritual break had been removed, and the devil was celebrating. In the midst of despair. My lips could barely utter words, but inside I repeated over and over again, "Lord, keep me in your presence. Don't leave me here. Please don't let me stay." And the Spirit responded silently, reminding me of what Revelation 3:10 says. "Because you have kept the word of my patience, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is to come upon the whole world. Detest those who die on the earth today." That verse was like a ray of hope in the midst of the storm. Because I understood that although darkness will cover the earth, God has promised to keep his own. That promise is what should drive us to live in holiness, to be vigilant, to remain steadfast until the end. When the vision began to fade, the only thing left was a cry in my heart. Christ is coming soon. And when I opened my eyes and returned to the reality of my room, I was still trembling with tears in my eyes, feeling like my life would never be the same again. Brothers, what I saw was not an invention, it was not a passing dream, it was a revelation that left its mark on me. a warning from heaven for us to wake up, because while many are occupied with the things of this world, time is running out, and when Christ comes for his church, darkness will cover the earth. I sat in my bed trembling like never before. The clock struck the hour. But I didn't know if it was day or night. Everything around me seemed distant, foreign, as if the world I lived in was no longer the same. I had seen the churches in despair, the streets filled with wailing, and a darkness that covered the earth like a blanket from hell itself. And even though I was back in my room, the feeling was the same. My life would never be the same again. "Franklin, I cannot keep this to myself," I told him between sobs. He looked at me with compassion, not fully understanding what had happened, but he knew that what I had seen had marked my soul. I am not given to recording videos or sharing my experiences in public. I have always considered myself small before God. Someone I don't seek the spotlight or applause, but what I experienced doesn't allow me to remain silent. It's like a fire in my bones, like the prophet Jeremiah when he said, "I will not remember him again, nor speak in his name anymore." However, there was a burning fire in my heart, deep in my bones. I tried to bear it, but I couldn't. Jeremiah 20:9. That same fire burned inside me. I tried to contain it, but the images returned again and again. The screams, the disfigured faces, the darkness that suffocated the earth. I knew that if I didn't speak, if I didn't share it, I would be unfair to my own soul and to those who need to hear this warning. I stood up with difficulty, every muscle felt heavy, but I did it. I felt God telling me to speak, "Don't be silent, because what you saw is real." And as I did, my tears fell without stopping. I thought of so many people who entertain themselves with the things of this world, Christians who are distracted by vanity, by the daily grind, by the fleeting. What will become of them if Christ comes? Right now, I saw like a movie in my mind, sisters in the faith engaged in pointless arguments, in ministry competitions, wanting to stand out more than others, forgetting the most important thing, the intimate relationship with God. I saw young people running after trends, trapped in social media, more concerned with the approval of men than the approval of Christ. I saw men dedicated to work, accumulating riches but neglecting their souls, and I understood that all of that will remain here. The Spirit reminded me of the words of John 2:17, "The world and its desires pass away, but he who does the will of God remains forever." And that truth resounded inside me like thunder. Everything this world offers is temporary. Houses, cars, money, titles, fame, everything will remain. Only the eternal will remain. While I was thinking about this, I also heard the lament of those who in the vision said, "Oh, what is coming to the earth is great, very great." And I understood that this lament was more than a human fear. It was a belated recognition of what God had always warned me about. Brothers, I was there, sitting on my bed with trembling hands. And the only thing I could repeat was, "Lord, help us to be prepared." Because if I understood anything from that experience, it's that there is no time to waste. We can't keep getting distracted by things that perish. We can't keep postponing our consecration. The time is now. I don't know how to explain the pressure I felt in my chest. It was as if each breath was a reminder that my life had been extended a little longer to deliver this message. And at the same time, the weight of reality made me cry inconsolably. I saw myself as someone who had been pulled from a fatal accident just to tell what happened, not because I deserve it, but because God in His mercy allowed me to see it. And when I understood that, I understood that this testimony was not mine. It was the Lord's, and I had to make it known. I thought about how many Christians are playing with their salvation. Some say, "God knows my heart, nothing happens today." Others say, "I'll consecrate myself later. Now I want to enjoy life," and yet the Bible makes it clear in Matthew 12:44. Therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man will come at an hour you do not expect." That verse became a hammer that pounded on my mind, because the reality is that he will come at an hour we do not expect. He will come when some are working, others are sleeping, others are even preaching. He will come in an instant, and there will be no room for excuses. While I was reflecting, I looked at Franklin with tears in my eyes and told him, "If after this we remain the same, it would be our downfall. This has to transform us. Franklin, we cannot continue as if nothing had happened." He sensed it in silence, and in his gaze I saw concern mixed with love, like someone who understands that what God showed us is not a game. Then I decided in my heart, I will speak, I will preach, I will testify because time is short. My life will never be the same again, and even though my voice trembles, even though my face is wet with tears, I will repeat it as many times as necessary. Christ is coming soon. But what I saw was not an invention. It was not a product of my imagination, it was a clear warning from heaven. And if God showed it to me awake, it is because he wants me to say it awake, to proclaim it in life, to not remain silent. I don't know how long I remained hugged to Franklin, my body curled up, as if wanting to protect myself from something that cannot be seen with the eyes. But it is felt with my whole being. The room was silent except for my labored breathing and the murmur of my prayers. Sometimes I raised my voice and said, "Lord, have mercy." Other times, only my tears spoke. Franklin held my shoulders, looked at me with a mixture of tenderness and concern, and asked very slowly, like someone afraid of breaking something sacred, "What did you see?" I swallowed hard, my lips moved before the words came out. I saw churches filled with wailing. I saw the streets with brothers running desperately. I saw a darkness so thick it seemed to devour the earth. I closed my eyes. The images returned with brutal clarity. The voice like thunder repeating, "Christ came." The temples, with barely 2 or 3 people beating their chests, the starless sky. Franklin wasn't asleep. I was awake. It was real. I lived it with my eyes open. He squeezed my hands. "Look," he said calmly. "Let's breathe. Let's see. Think about what time it is. What day is it? Can you call someone? Hello?" His very human questions pierced me like a ground wire. I picked up the phone with fingers that were still trembling. The screen showed me the time and the date. Everything was in its place, as if the world had remained the same. I slid the contact of a sister from the church through the dial. I heard the tone, and when she answered with a sleepy voice, "Hello," I only managed to say, "Are you okay?" "Everything is normal." And she, confused, replied that she was sleeping. I hung up, but not before asking him to pray. I put the phone back on the nightstand. Franklin continued looking at me, hoping my soul would find space to put it into words. Unspeakable. "It's not hysteria," I said, "it's not just any scare, there's something inside me that confirms it. The Lord showed me what many will experience if they don't prepare, and then the question that most embarrassed me pierced my chest like an arrow, what if it's already happened, what if it all happened, and I'm here without realizing it? God," the thought left me breathless. Franklin hugged me tighter. "You're here with me. God is not a God of confusion. If he showed it to you, it was so you could speak. So you could awaken others." But the lump in my throat wouldn't budge. My mind traveled back and forth with the same insistence. And yes, it's over. And yes, the voice I heard wasn't a warning, but a verdict. And yes, my name wasn't ready. I stood up slowly. I took a few steps around the room, like someone walking in an invisible sanctuary. With each step, a word beat like a drum in my spirit. I knelt at the foot of the bed. I had no words to say. I was broken, Lord. Pray if you showed me the desperation of those who stayed behind. If you let me smell the darkness, if you made me tremble with that Christ, it's not to paralyze me, It's to humble me. Show me if there's something in me that displeases you. Examine me, God. I want to be ready. I want to be right with you. In that silence, not external, but of the soul, the atmosphere changed. I didn't see lights, I didn't hear melodies. But an indisputable presence sat beside me. As if the sky itself inclined its ear, and then as if someone were pronouncing each syllable upon my bones. I heard it, I'm coming. No, it wasn't a timid whisper nor a frightening cry. It was a declaration ordered by the universe, I'm coming. I felt that the phrase wasn't just heard. It pierced me, it rearranged me, it shed layers of fear and left me with a certainty that brooks no negotiation. Did you hear it? I breathlessly asked what Franklin said. The voice answered, it said it again, I'm coming, and I began to cry, but not in the same way. It wasn't the blind cry of anguish, it was a clean cry, like when the rain washes away the old dust and the street is once again passable. I'm coming, 3 syllables to break chains. To break the sleep of habit, to light extinguished lamps. I stayed on my knees for a long time between sobs. I began to declare in a low voice promises that I knew by heart but that morning burned like new. Lord, your word says that you come for a church without spot or wrinkle, that he who is to come will come and will not delay, that blessed are those who watch, those who keep their garments. Each verse was a rope to the heart so I wouldn't fall into the abyss of fear. Then a scene from the vision returned clearly, I walking through temples and streets. Hearing a single cry, Christ came, and reading in the faces the common conclusion, we weren't ready. I touched my chest with a closed fist, Lord, don't allow that I wasn't ready. Be the phrase that defines me, make me a watchtower, if you showed me what you saw. Give me courage to say it as I heard it, without belittling, without embellishing, without asking fear's permission. Today, Franklin sat next to me on the floor. He prayed in a simple way, without adjectives, without eloquence. Father, guard our house, may your holy fear cleanse us, may your peace govern us. Teach us to watch. His voice lulled me not to sleep but to rest. On the rock, I took a breath. I had to face the other half of the anguish. No, it's just over. But what if what I saw was for me and I fell short? I got up and went to the closet mirror. I wasn't looking for my face, I was looking for my eyes. There was a mix of tiredness and determination in them. Lord, I said to my reflection, if you gave me this burden, you'll also give me the shoulder to carry it. If you gave me this message, you'll also open the mouths that must hear it. I went back to bed, and as if